I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
Yep, Shawn Knight from Childbite. Yeah, Strange Waste EP came out in November last year. Yeah, so it's been a little under a year. Lyrically, I would give myself, how would I rate my honesty level there? I don't know. I'm somewhere 75, 85. You know, I have different approaches for different songs. Some of them I've done on like an older EP called Monomania. That one, I just went full on like abstract Dada, you know, Edgar Allan Poe on acid kind of thing. Just like that stuff was not any. They weren't like real story. It was like just weird phrases that you could kind of like come up with your own story or take away whatever you want from that. Whereas a lot of the other songs are definitely things that I think about, my opinions on certain subjects, but I usually, to make it interesting and not to make it sound like a million other bands that have talked about these normal subjects, I'll usually give it some really weird kind of twist to it where I'm kind of take liberties with the wording of it and try and be kind of creative and you know, have little flourishes and whatnot, so that it's, if you weren't really paying attention to what it was, it just sounds like this kind of crazy lyrics and you're like, what the hell is he talking about? But if you actually like look into it, you're like, oh, okay, I see what he means there, and that kind of ties into this one. So it's hard to say. It's I kind of have, like I said, a few different ways of going at that. I definitely think that this version of the band is the best, and we've had a few. We could really overarching over the past 10 years of the band. There was the first half of it, from 2005 to 10 basically, and then there's the new version kind of started then, even though it still was evolving, and it still is evolving, and we might change more, I would imagine. Like early on stuff, I was doing a lot of synthesizer. It wasn't as nearly as heavy as it is now. I wasn't really screaming. It was more kind of warbly David Yao meets Jello Biafra, which there's still elements of that, but I'm also getting a little bit of my old school Henry Rollins on nowadays. But yeah, it's I like it the best. This version of the band is the closest to what I was growing up on when I was like 13, 14, 15 years old, getting into music. So yeah, I'm the most stoked about what we've got going on right now. I guess the vocal style, I'm glad that at least to most people it doesn't sound like one thing, whether it's our music or the vocals. And it's funny to hear different people's take on it. Sometimes people will say like, oh, you guys are like a punk rock version of Clutch. I'm like, all right. Or you guys are like, your vocals remind me of Odorous from Guar. I'm like, I can totally hear that, and that definitely is there. Or you know, whatever other touch points for vocals. Yeah, like I said, like Rollins, Jello, Odorous, a little more nowadays, a little bit of Phil Anselmo, even if he wasn't working with us, that was starting to creep in there. Shit like fucking Primus, you know, fucking Les Claypool. And not everybody that's into heavy music likes that. I don't really give a shit. We all grew up on that stuff, or at least Shawn, the bass player, and I did. And yeah, I think it's some sort of mishmash of all those dudes. And oh, Mike Patton, how can I not? Like, I don't really sound like him at all, but he's definitely a big influence on me. And I've been, you know, I've got a half sleeve of Mr. Bungle over here. I've just definitely grew up a follower of all things Patton. Yeah, I think we tend to be influenced by more eclectic bands. We usually bands that we reference in our music or talk about usually aren't bands that were just like this certain genre, unless they were like a forerunner of that, you know, like Minor Threat or something, where like, yeah, they are definitely old school 80s hardcore, but they're one of the bands that helped invent that. So yeah, all the bands, most of the bands I always was attracted to when I was younger were very eclectic, like Mr. Bungle or Faith No More, even Guar. They had weird songs, like they'd have heavy songs, they'd have loungy songs. Like I said, you know, Primus, I don't know, I definitely yeah, I'm stoked on bands that are like us, where they are hard to pigeonhole and fit into they're hard to describe. You know, that one, you know, Phil finding us was through a friend of a friend, and the first project we worked on with him was we did this EP of Anal Cunt covers, and we were just like, dude, we had this idea to do it, and I was like, well, if we were going to do that and we wanted to have a guest vocalist, I know the Shoot for the Stars ultimate guy, and I was like, I got a friend of a friend that maybe can try and get the word to him, and it worked. We recorded the music for it, sent it through, made its way to him, and he, you know, next thing we know, we're playing a down show, and he was like, oh yeah, I heard the Anal Cut songs, I'll do it. So then it just, from there, we kept working together and did Strange Waste, and now we have a new record coming out soon. You know, my art nowadays, at least for the band, is a lot like the band is nowadays. It's really heavily influenced by the types of stuff I was growing up on in my formative years when I was a young boy getting into high school and stuff. Artists I'd reference nowadays, I'd say Pushead, who, you know, obviously through all the Metallica artwork. Raymond Pettibone is another big one who did all the Black Flag artwork. Those two guys would be like major ones. I think if you looked at my illustrations, you'd be like, oh, I could see a combination of those two guys. Not that I'm trying to rip anybody off, but though that's where I think it is coming from. If I had to, like, I don't usually think about it, I just do it, but if I had to figure it out, that's probably where that shit comes from. Biggest misconception about Detroit is that it is a desolate wasteland that you're gonna get murdered in if you enter it. We don't really downplay it that often because it's kind of funny, and people think that they see us and we're like wild on stage, and they hear that we're from Detroit, so they think that we just like live in abandoned warehouses with like packs of wild dogs helping us hunt and shit like that. And I'm not gonna like tell anybody otherwise if they don't want to go into it further, but it's not true. You know, there's bad parts, but I've been in a lot of other cities. We're in Oakland right now. I've been in like city like Baltimore, Philadelphia, fucking Buffalo, Pittsburgh. I've been in a lot of cities that have some pretty gnarly spots that you don't want to go into. But then there's awesome spots too, and like where there's like, you know, where cool shit's happening. So Detroit is not that unlike other places. There's some desolation. It's just because it's so big, and there was the mass exodus, and now there's cool parts and there's activity going on. Now more than ever over the past probably 20, 30 years. But yeah, there's definitely certain parts where there's abandoned buildings, trees growing up out of the top of an abandoned building, stuff like that. But those ones really aren't even that bad to go in because just nobody's there. That's the type of place where you'd imagine some tumbleweeds, and it's got that vibe. You know, so that's the biggest misconception, is that it's like, I don't think it's murder capital of the world anymore. And it's, you know, the part we live in, it's not bad at all, like just outside the border. It's actually really pretty nice, but still affordable. It's called Ferndale. And there's great parts in the city where there's all sorts of awesome stuff going on, revitalization. Yeah, that's about it, man. There's bad parts, but there's good parts. It's just like where you live, and whatever. Don't be afraid to come there, because there's way more cool shit going on there than bad shit. So I highly recommend people come to Detroit, see it firsthand, and, you know, get their own feeling on it. Yeah, we got this new record that we did with Phil Anselmo. We haven't done a full length since 5 or so years ago, since we've been in this new version of the band. So I'm really excited about actually finally having a full length is a bigger statement, and I'm really excited about getting that out. And yeah, we recorded it with Phil down at his place in New Orleans. He's got a studio on his property. He's got an engineer that lives at his house, so he, at the drop of a dime, can like go, hey, Steve, let's go record something, you know. So that was really cool. We got to stay at his place for a couple weeks, live at the house, walk over to the studio whenever everybody's feeling ready, and record this album. And we're taking our time with it. We've been still tweaking the mix. It's been months, and we're just like, but we've been touring so much, he's been touring so much, that it's just like, every once or twice a month we're like, hey, here's a new version of the mix, let's check it out. We make some notes, we send them back. This tour we're doing right now with Ken Mode actually goes through New Orleans, and we have a day off there, so we're going to spend a day there finalizing the mix for the new record. It's called Negative Noise, and it's actually more than a record. I mean, we've got like 13 songs. I don't think all of them are going to make it out, so we might have some extra songs for stuff here and there, bonus tracks or something. And yeah, it's too early to say when it's coming out. I'm imagining sometime in the winter, so probably be early 2016. And we've been hitting it hard this year, and lucky enough to get on tour after tour, as far as like Ken Mode or Coliseum, Super Joint, Ritual, Down. In November we're going out with Negative Approach. I almost said the name of our record, but yeah, Negative Approach. We were the fucking forefathers of Detroit hardcore in the early 80s, and we're stoked about doing that. And so we've been lucky to go on all these crazy tours, and the plan is to definitely hit it as hard or harder next year when we have this new album.